Great, thank you. Hello and welcome again to today's VISTA sponsor orientation. Today's presentation is really meant to be a first glimpse of the information and the resources needed to carry out your new role as a VISTA project sponsor. There are two CNCF staff members who will be presenting today. I am one of them. My name is Barbara Reynolds, and I'm the AmeriCorps VISTA Training Director at the Corporation for National and Community Service. And I'm joined by my colleague who's going to talk to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Chenet, and I'm a State Program Officer with the Office of Field Liaison with the Corporation for National and Community Service. I'm located in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Throughout our presentation, Barbara and I will be joined by State Office and VISTA colleagues. They will keep an eye on the chat panel and work with us on the question and answers.
Awesome. Thank you, David. I'm happy to hear our phone patching in is working. So next up, we just want to get a quick sense again, a little more interaction with you, our VISTA sponsors, and get a sense of who's on the line with us today. You guys can see we have a bunch of participants. You saw a bunch of howdies and highs a second ago. So now if you could use the chat panel again, just to type in a couple of quick answers. So first of all, what's the name of the organization that you're logging on from? What's the name of your organization? Where are you physically located? And if you feel like it and have time, if you would like to share your favorite winter food. So I will share with you my answers, which are my organization is CNCF. I'm in Washington, D.C., and my favorite winter food is anything that is pumpkin flavored. So pumpkin the world. I'm all about it. Great, thank you. Yep, I see a bunch of answers coming into the chat box. Mac and cheese, always a good one for winter food. Lots of different locations. You guys can see if you're scrolling through the chat as well. San Francisco, Arkansas, New York, Boston. Wonderful, thank you. Yep, thank you so much. Keep those chats coming in. In this webinar world, this is the way that we can really greet each other. I see Courtney likes gumbo for the winter. Wonderful, thank you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to David to share a few more introductory comments. David?
Great, thanks, Barbara. My favorite winter food is Brussels sprouts, of course, with lots of bacon. So while this information is most relevant for VISTA project directors, we have designed this session so that everyone involved in the management and oversight of the VISTA project will gain valuable knowledge from reviewing this content. We recommend that VISTA project directors, project and site supervisors, and authorized representatives all review this content so your organization will be well prepared to manage a VISTA program. In our development, we are assuming that you are all relatively new or even brand new to VISTA. In developing today's presentation, we are assuming that participants have looked at a number of materials ahead of time. These include VISTA 101 and 201, and these materials are stored on the VISTA campus. Let's jump into our presentation. Barbara, what are we going to cover today?
So here is our agenda for today's orientation. Our session is going to focus on a few key pieces of information that will help your VISTA project succeed. We're going to look at some resources and people that can help you get your bearings in our Amero world, in our VISTA world. We'll talk about the big picture of national service, including the structure of CNCF, some of our programs, our chain of communication, and some of the core principles of VISTA. We'll look at your responsibilities with VISTA member support as well as project management. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the governing documents that oversee our work. We'll also review some of the recommendations for success, some tips, some training and tools and resources that we hope will be useful to you. We'll wrap up with next steps from after today's webinar, and then I'll wrap up for the end of the day. We hope that we'll have time, we know we'll have time for Q&A in the chat panel, and we hope we're going to have some time for Q&A on the phone as well. So as a new sponsor, your head may be swimming with all the CNCS and VISTA lingo, particularly if you are new, relatively or completely new to this world. So as I mentioned a minute ago during our session today, you're invited to complete the attached acronym bingo. It's designed just to help you quickly learn some of the key Ameri terms. Totally optional, not meant to be anything that's stressful at all. You can find this one-page document, again, in that handouts to download panel. You just highlight the acronym bingo, it's the first item in the handout, and then click the download files button, and that'll open up in your browser. So again, if you guys feel like it, use that. The bingo has a few obvious acronyms like VISTA, for example, and then there are a few that only the seasoned VISTA project sponsor will know. So we're hoping, if you don't know those already, you will learn them by the end of today. Together, we hope that this list will be a really helpful resource or reference tool for you as you get to know CNCS, our staff, and our VISTA project requirements.
So if you are a new VISTA sponsor, it can be overwhelming to figure out what you need to know, where to find the information, and who to reach out to for help. Here are a few key resources for you. We will refer to these throughout the presentation today. And as a result of our presentation, we want to be sure that everyone on today's webinar will learn a core set of terms for VISTA project management. This graphic can help you know where to find information on a variety of topics. Some of the resources will connect you to people, for example, the CNCS State Office and National Service Hotline, while others are online resources we hope you become comfortable with. eGrants, for instance, contains information about your application, VISTA assignment descriptions, reporting, and other topics. But we also provide various resources available for download and public consumption. These links and more are available in your VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. You can find a link to the Sponsor Resource Guide in the web link panels to the right of your screen. Along with starting to get a handle on the written materials that support you and your VISTA project, I want to underscore the importance of establishing communication expectations with your staff, VISTA members, sub-site staff, and CNCS. One way to avoid unforeseen issues and complications during the VISTA year is to establish a solid communication chain. In this task, your top resource will be your CNCS State Office. The CNCS State Office is able to provide a lot of support and also direct you to key tools and resources. Technical assistance from the CNCS State Office can take many forms. For example, they can provide technical support for things like member recruitment, training, reporting, and other things you're responsible for. The CNCS State Office can offer support for you in a member management and challenges. For VISTA members and supervisors with questions or concerns, you are the first line resource. For questions relating to benefits, you can direct your VISTA member to the VISTA Member Support Unit, or the VMSU, the member handbook, and other resources on the VISTA campus. Depending on how your project is structured, it might be the case that you are the main point of contact for members and supervisors. If it's a question that you're not able to address, then you would contact your CNCS State Office. Your CNCS State Office has access to other departments and units at CNCS in the event they need additional input. In addition to the resources included on the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide, we want to highlight some key contacts and information that we want to be sure you know about. On the top of the list is your CNCS State Office. They're there to help you ensure you have the tools, resources, and knowledge you need to lead a successful VISTA project. The VISTA Sponsor Assistant page referenced here should be one of the first places you go because it contains information about recruitment, marketing, fact sheets, and much more. Much of the material available on this page is print ready, so be sure to check it out. The VISTA campus is filled with helpful tools and resources. You can find the member handbook and sponsor handbook there, as well as a variety of courses to help you throughout the life of your project. There's also a supervisor forum where you can have a dialogue with other supervisors from around the country. Many of the resources highlighted on the resource guide point you to the VISTA campus. Be sure you create a supervisor account on the VISTA campus, otherwise you won't be able to access everything referenced on the sponsor resource guide. The National Service Hotline offers support to you as well as your members and supervisors. They can help with common eGrants questions and technical issues like resetting passwords. They can also escalate calls to the eGrants help desk. Be sure to keep the eGrants support link handy, but remember that you can also call the National Service Hotline directly. The National Service Hotline will also escalate calls to the VISTA Member Support Unit, or the VMSU. The VMSU can troubleshoot member issues related to the living allowance or relocation payment issues, education award questions, and benefit questions. Also, check out the last two websites for gear. On the pub site, you can find things like posters and brochures. These resources are free. On the Service Gear site, you can find things like brochures, posters, and other printable publications, as well as branded clothing, pens, These resources are available for purchase.
As Study said a few minutes ago, we designed our presentation today with the assumption that you've looked at some basic 100-level VISTA information. We hope you've had time to do that. If you looked at the VISTA 101 course before today, you've learned a little bit about VISTA, our mission, our focus on empowering communities to find solutions, our battling of poverty, and how VISTA members build capacity within organizations. If you haven't had a chance yet to look at these 101 resources, that is okay. You can find them in the sponsor resource guide, the list of links that I mentioned a minute ago that's in the handouts, and you certainly are welcome at any point to take those courses and get that information. I do want to take just a minute today to discuss the structured CNCS and a few principles that are central to our VISTA program. So hopefully this is review, but if not, it's a good starting point. So the Corporation for National and Community Service mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement, as you can see on the slide in front of you. Each year, we engage about 5 million Americans in community service at the local level, state level, and national level. CNCS is the nation's largest grant maker that supports service and volunteerism, and we, as I said, work with projects and individuals in service all across the country. Next up, Debbie is going to share a little information about a couple of our main programs.
Thanks, Barbara. Under the broad CNCS mission, there are two main programming areas, Senior Corps and AmeriCorps. Senior Corps was created in 1965 and includes 3 different programs to engage and serve senior adults in the U.S. Individuals who are 55 and older can join the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, Foster Grandparent Program, and the Senior Companion Program. AmeriCorps was created in 1994, and over 1 million members have contributed over 1 billion service hours across America. As you can see, there are 3 different AmeriCorps programs: AmeriCorps State and National, AmeriCorps NCCC, and AmeriCorps VISTA. CNCS state offices administer VISTA and Senior Corps programs with your support. For example, in New Mexico, we oversee 9 VISTA projects with about 100 VISTA members. We also oversee 50 Senior Corps programs that manage over 4,500 volunteers. Next, we'll turn our attention to the history of VISTA. Barbara?
Great, thank you. So we're going to talk just a little bit about how VISTA started and then share a few of the major legislative milestones in the program's history. I think it's good just to touch on these legislative milestones, as we are a federal program, and so there's a lot of information that we can glean from these different laws, and all of this really impacts our day-to-day work in VISTA. So first of all, as you can see on the slide in front of you, in 1964, President Johnson declared a war on poverty as part of a national legislation and signed the Economic Opportunity Act. The act at that time created Volunteers in Service to America, or VISTA, again, easy acronym, as well as several other programs to combat poverty around the country. VISTA is authorized under the Domestic Volunteer Service Act of 1973, so over about a decade. There was a lot of VISTA action going on, and then with the DVSA, that's our authorizing legislation, that particular act, along with all of its amendments, really provide the legal boundaries for VISTA and really give us our guidance on what we can and can't do as part of the VISTA program. Since its founding, VISTA has also evolved over the years, over these many decades, to reflect our current national priorities as well as our community needs. So in 1993, when another national initiative was created under President Clinton, the National Community Service Trust Act, VISTA was a part of that as well. With the Trust Act being created in 1993, the legislation merged several national service programs, including VISTA. The legislation brought VISTA under the broad umbrella of AmeriCorps and became part of the overall national service portfolio. And then most recently, of course, VISTA and all of the AmeriCorps programs, all of our Senior Corps programs, and really everything governed by CNCS have been impacted by the 2009 Kennedy Serve America Act, which again reauthorized and expanded the organization's national service program. So lots of legislative activity there. As I said, many of our guidance, our rules, everything that we do with VISTA flows from these different milestones. So your projects were selected because they demonstrate a substantial connection to VISTA's mission, objectives, and principles. As you know, our mission is to strengthen organizations that alleviate poverty through volunteering and the mobilization of resources. And VISTA is the only AmeriCorps program focused exclusively on fighting poverty. It harkens back to that, the war on poverty, as I mentioned a moment ago with President Johnson. VISTA has 3 specific objectives. One is to strengthen local agencies and organizations. Next is to encourage volunteer service at the local level, and then to generate the commitment of private sector resources. And as you can see, all of these objectives link directly to our overarching goal and focus on building capacity. So finally, there are a few core principles that really shape everything AmeriCorps VISTA does. And you've probably heard these words already a lot today. You'll hear them a lot more this afternoon, and you'll see them everywhere in your work with VISTA. So first of all, these principles include obviously a focus on anti-poverty programming. Anything we can do to fight poverty is a major focus for our program. Next up, of course, community empowerment and engaging community members in the solutions to fight poverty that's a major focus of VISTA as well. Capacity building, as you've heard, so building the capacity of local organizations to help fight poverty is a huge focus. And then finally, VISTA is really charged and really dedicated to implementing sustainable solutions. So the work of our VISTA members and of our VISTA-sponsored partners, we really hope that work is going to sustain over time and not just occur and not just be something that's a resource during the VISTA members' term of service. And as I said, your projects were selected, and hopefully you selected VISTA because you are working alongside us really with these principles. So next we're going to review some key terms and definitions, again, more Ameri-lingo. This information is based on our authorizing legislation, that DVSA I mentioned a second ago, and it's important to understand just how what these terms mean and how they operate. So I'm just going to talk through them quickly. So first, a project or a VISTA project means a set of activities that specifically engage AmeriCorps VISTA members, so the human bodies, the people that you see on the slide in front of you. That determines if it's a VISTA project. A project is overseen by a sponsor, and so that's you guys. Next up, a sponsor, project sponsor, VISTA sponsor, or VISTA project sponsor, all the variations of the words, means a public agency or a private nonprofit, so it's a not-for-profit entity, that receives assistance and is responsible for operating and overseeing a VISTA project. So pretty straightforward. A public agency may be a federal, state, local, or tribal government organization as well. Next up, a project director or VISTA project director is a staff person of the sponsor, so of that sponsor organization, who's been assigned the overall responsibility for the management of the VISTA project. Project directors are responsible for executing all aspects of the project as outlined in the application to CNCS and as agreed upon. Next up, the supervisor, so the VISTA member supervisor, is an individual who directly supervises one member or multiple members. This can be at the project level, it can be a site or subrecipient level as well. Project sponsors are responsible for ensuring that all of our supervisors, all of our AmeriCorps VISTA member supervisors are trained, that they know what's supposed to happen with their VISTAs, they know all the rules and all the guidance. It's important to note sometimes project directors can also be supervisors. These titles can definitely be interchangeable and overlap. And then finally, as David was mentioning a few moments ago, we have our CNCS State Office, or CSO. The CNCS has field staff that work across the U.S., as David mentioned a moment ago. The state offices represent all of our states. They're in D.C., and they represent the U.S. territories as well. And so today, I'm really happy and lucky to be joined by one of our state office colleagues. So next up, David's going to talk a little bit more about state office and what the folks in his realm do.
Great, thanks, Barbara. By now, you should be familiar with your CNCS state office. Let's do a quick check to see who you work with. Please type the name of your CNCS program officer in the chat panel. I'll pause for just a second while you do that. Thank you. I see a few of my colleagues listed in the chat. And it's completely okay if you haven't met your program officer yet. As we said at the beginning, we know a bunch of folks on today's webinar are new to our work, so you may not have had a chance to meet with your CNCS State Office team yet, which is perfectly okay. As we discussed earlier, CNCS State Offices manage AmeriCorps VISTA as well as Senior Corps programming for their states. For VISTA projects, the CNCS State Office helps develop, support, and facilitate projects throughout their life cycle. State offices are there to sing your praises and help you through challenging times. They're available to help with member emergencies, troubleshooting, and policy questions. They can also support you by connecting you to resources and training tools for you and your members as well. One important note here, the CNCS State Office also plays an important role in improving candidates for service and removing members from service. As a reminder, only CNCS can improve members for service. The CNCS State Office carefully reviews all applicants that you recommend for VISTA service to ensure that they're a good fit for the program. Likewise, CNCS alone has the authority to remove a member from service. This is one of the reasons why it's critically important for you to update your CNCS State Office early and often when it comes to member issues. We'll talk more about the importance of documenting member performance and actions later. Let's talk about your members. As you know, VISTA service is a 12-month full-time commitment where VISTA members provide indirect service to build capacity and sustainability with programs that work to alleviate poverty. VISTAs are members. They're not employees, interns, or volunteers with the sponsoring organization. VISTAs also serve at their sponsoring agency. They do not work there. It's important to remember that VISTAs receive a modest living allowance that aligns with the community they are serving. Let's look at a few more important topics for your members and those of us who support them. Members will have a lot of questions on a variety of topics, and the topics of their questions often depend on how far into their service term they are. VISTA questions tend to fall under one of these categories: benefits, forms, end-of-service benefits, travel, and service letters. Another important note here, the CNCS State Office also plays an important role in improving candidates for service and removing members for service. As a reminder, only CNCS can improve members for service. The CNCS State Office carefully reviews all applicants that you recommend for VISTA service to ensure they're a good fit for the program. And like we mentioned earlier, CNCS alone has the authority to remove a member from service. This is one of the reasons why it's critically important for you to update your CNCS State Office early and often when it comes to member issues. But we're going to talk about more on that in the upcoming slides. Members who are about to start service might have more questions about the amount of their living allowance, as well as when and how it's paid. Don't forget to fully explain member benefits and address some of these topics while interviewing those highly qualified candidates.
Great. So I want to just pause for a second. I know this is a super busy slide, so there's a lot of words here. I just want to point out a couple more things related to supporting our members. So newer members, so folks who are newer in their term of service, they may have just started, they're early in their 365 days, may also have questions about how to request forbearance on their student loans. They may want to know or talk through how the cash stipend differs from the education award on benefits that come at the end of their term of service. They also may just have questions about how the education award itself can be used if they select that benefit. Later in the year, once they're into their terms of service, members may need more information about how non-competitive eligibility works. Hopefully those are words that are familiar to you. And they may also be trying to figure out when they'll be able to access their verification of service letters. So things, again, resources that really come later in their terms of service that will be very beneficial to them. It's ultimately each individual VISTA member's responsibility to understand the details around these topics, around their particular benefits. Obviously, every member's life situation is different. We want them to know which benefits apply to them, and we want to know how to get information and how to take action on these benefits. So it's always helpful when, the VISTA staff, the state office staff, along with our sponsors, can have this information and be pretty fluent in it again, or at least know where to find the information, so that for you guys, when you're recruiting candidates for your VISTA positions, you'll have good information and good facts to give them. And then once your VISTAs come on board, you'll also, again, have really good information or know where to get good information to support VISTAs throughout their terms of service. So we were peppering additional resources through today's presentation. So now you can see here are a few more helpful links to really go deeper in some of the items that David and I just touched on lightly. So on the screen in front of you, you can see the link to the VISTA Campus and Benefits Hub, so a hub of information regarding all of the benefits we were just talking about. Again, the VISTA Member Handbook is an extensive document. If you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend that you put this on your reading list, because it is full of many, many good pieces of information. And then again here, this is a link to the National Service Hotline and the VISTA Member Support Unit that we mentioned a moment ago. Both of those, the hotline and the VMSU, are super, super supports for VISTAs around everything, all of their benefit information, everything that we've been talking about. So far today, we've looked at, hopefully, we've looked at with you where to start as a new VISTA project sponsor. We've looked at very, very quickly at the origins of VISTA, how we got started in some of our legislative milestones. And then we talked just briefly about some of the important details about the member position, some of the benefits for the AmeriCorps VISTA members. Next up, we're going to jump into some of the core responsibilities for our sponsors. So for those of you on the phone today, we're talking to you. We're talking about your positions. So in your role as a VISTA sponsor, you've joined many, many others. As you can see in the chat box, we have folks on with us today from all different kinds of organizations from all over the country. So welcome to the VISTA sponsor world. And hopefully together we are all united in our fight against poverty in our communities. Your role obviously is very important to the success of the project, as you know, and as we want to articulate fully for you how important your role is. We know it's important for the success of your project, for the success of your member or members if you have more than one, and then ultimately, frankly, for the services and for the community that we're all working on together. We definitely look to every VISTA project to be accountable for the responsibilities that we're outlining here and that are outlined in other resources like the VISTA 101 course and the handbook. And then ultimately, of course, we believe it's all of our sponsors' responsibility to ensure that any sub-sites you have, so any organizations that you're working with locally that are also going to be managing, supporting, and engaging with our VISTA members, that they know what their responsibilities are, they have some of this basic orientation information, and that they're going to be really good partners with us in compliance with our VISTA policies and procedures. That's important across the board, no matter who's involved. So we take just a few minutes to look at some aspects of AmeriCorps VISTA member management. We think, and people tell us, the VISTAs tell us and sponsors tell us, the successful VISTA project will absolutely start off with a strong and thorough recruitment plan. That makes sense, right? We got to get the VISTAs in order to have them deployed, trained and deployed and effective. So for a recruitment plan, at a minimum, this includes, first of all, creating a really solid VISTA assignment description, or VAD. That's a massively important acronym in the VISTA world. If you don't know it, please, welcome. Get to know VAD. So the VISTA assignment description, or VAD, guides every single VISTA member's activities throughout the service year. And as hopefully you know, or you will soon know, it is something that's created at the beginning of the year. So beyond the magic of the VAD, we also look to our sponsors to recruit candidates for VISTA service in any way that you can imagine through all appropriate avenues. That includes really taking time and effort to write interesting and frankly honest ads to promote your VISTA positions and to attract top quality candidates. We look to our sponsors and we think successful projects are those that put a lot of effort into screening applicants, so that can include in-person interviews, writing samples, phone interviews, etc. And then we look to our sponsors to recommend the best candidates for service. So candidates for VISTA service who've been thoroughly screened, folks that have been really well informed about the responsibilities of a VISTA member through a strong VAD, and are really just positioned well to serve in VISTA. We also, from there, from the recruitment responsibility, we look to our sponsors to provide an in-depth on-site orientation and training program to all incoming VISTA members at the beginning of their service, so whenever that is in the calendar year. And then we also look to our project sponsors and colleagues to maintain an ongoing training program with VISTAs. We hope that together, certainly at your project, with our organization, with our state office colleagues, we're looking to provide professional development opportunities for VISTAs throughout the year to make it a really impactful year for them.
Here are a few more important aspects of AmeriCorps member management. It's probably no surprise that the best projects offer day-to-day supervision and support of their members. This includes confirming that members have the space, supplies, and equipment necessary to carry out their service, providing reasonable accommodations to members who request them based on different abilities, and ensuring that members' activities are in line with their VADs. Even the best-run projects have member issues bubble up, so don't be disappointed if things get a little tricky. The important thing is to manage those members' issues appropriately. That means addressing member issues as they rise, and informing the CNCS state office early of issues, documenting all discussions, tracking performance measures, and keeping on top of the situation. And remember, only CNCS may remove members from your project, and only CNCS may terminate members. So your documentation of member issues and discussing them with the CNCS state office is very important.
So here are a couple more important responsibilities for sponsors. I think if nothing else, you've certainly heard how critical the communication is with our state offices. I think we're emphasizing that point. Similarly, here's some record-keeping responsibilities that I think also play a really key role in strong AmeriCorps member management. So first of all, timekeeping, right? We know, you guys saw just a few minutes ago, that there are 10 medical and 10 personal days allowed within the VISTA term. Those are benefits that members receive. So we're looking to our sponsors to be able to keep track of when those days occur, right? So really have a timekeeping system, whatever works within your particular organization, is something that we know is really important. And then we also look to our sponsors to have really solid data management beyond just time, right? We're looking for each of our partners to be able to capture the accomplishments, the work, the service work that's completed by VISTAs, and the accomplishments that occur from the members' work in partnership with you and in partnership with your community. We definitely hope this will help ensure that you have accurate data when it's time to report on some of the targets, right? Some of your goals that you outlined in your proposal to CNCS. So between these two tasks, keeping track of the VISTA members' time so we know where we are in the year, in the long VISTA year, and then really capturing those accomplishments. That'll go very, very far in helping us be able to report later on. So there is, as I said, a resource guide in the handouts panel on your screen that will also give some nice links for this particular topic as well. All right, so we're going, keeping on down the member management trail. In addition to the topics studied and I mentioned earlier, the following activities we think must be approved, are important and must be approved in advance. So with prior approval by the sponsor, so by you, and then your CNCS state office, VISTA members are allowed to do a few things, a few additional things within their terms of service. So they can telework or teleserve, meaning serve at a location other than their project site for limited durations. They can hold, if approved in advance, they can hold outside employment, and they can also attend educational courses. They can go to school for whatever level of schooling they are interested in or is appropriate. I do want to say, though, even though these activities are technically allowed, the VISTA member must request this through the sponsor, right, and through you and through the project director, and then these activities have to be approved by the state office. The reason, so we know that these are important activities for VISTA, And we want to constantly allow our members to remain focused on their community projects. So we're just very sensitive about them overextending, hence all of the layers of approval around these particular activities.
The CNCS State Office is always thinking about what's best for the project, and the CNCS State Office has the ability to deny requests that may interfere with the VISTA member service or interfere with the project. To be safe, you should consult with your CNCS State Office if any changes are made that impact or will impact the project, subsites, or members. This could mean a change with the project personnel and supervision of members, or it could mean that due to emerging community needs, a VAD must be tweaked to better support alleviating poverty in your communities. Regardless, it's always a good idea to check with your CNCS State Office, and the sooner they know about these shifts, the more support they'll be able to give.
All right, so now we've talked about some of the happy, joy, hopefully, of working with VISTA and VISTA members. Now we're going to talk about some of the restrictions, right? As we mentioned a few moments ago, this is a federal program, and there are a number of rules that govern our work and really restrictions on how the program operates and what the AmeriCorps members can do. So let's take a look at some of those restrictions and how they apply during the VISTA term of service. So good to know, if you don't already, that prior to their service, all AmeriCorps VISTA members must complete something called the Terms and Conditions course. This course details what they receive, what's provided to them, and what's allowed during their VISTA service. So from our perspective, from CNCS's perspective, VISTA members are well informed about these prohibited activities as they're coming into your project, into your site. And similarly, we want you to be well informed about them as well. So we need to say if a member violates a term, one of the terms or conditions, if they violate one of the policies, we really need you to immediately contact your state office. That is a huge communication chain that we want to make sure that we're reinforcing. Now, obviously, different restrictions, prohibitions, violations have different repercussions. So it will depend, of course, on what occurs, what the story is, what the outcome was of that situation, and then your state office will be a great partner helping to determine what needs to occur and be able to act promptly. So I just want to point out some of the specific prohibited activities. I hope, first of all, obviously, criminal activity is prohibited for everyone. What we mean here is for VISTA, if something does occur that is a crime that occurs during the VISTA's term, during our partnership together, we ask that you immediately notify your state office, right? This is just a huge piece of information we want to be sure to share. In addition, engaging in religious instruction, conducting worship services, or engaging in any form of proselytizing during service time, so during VISTA time, is prohibited. Also engaging in partisan political activities, so people who are running for office, laws that are being passed, et cetera, fundraising for a partisan political campaign at any time, or advertising oneself as a VISTA member while engaging in any partisan political activity. All of that is prohibited on the VISTA time. So specifically, the reason this is because of something called the Hatch Act that I suspect many folks have heard of. This act was enacted many years ago, back in 1939. For our purposes, it's important because it governs what federal employees can and cannot do. And for this very specific situation, VISTA members are considered federal employees, right? So for very limited purposes, including the restrictions imposed by the Hatch Act, that applies to VISTA members. So again, in general, these are the kinds of activities that cannot be engaged in while VISTAs are serving. It's important that, as I said, we think VISTAs are well informed about these restrictions, and we really want our sponsors to be as well. One specific restriction I would note here, I think a question that we receive often from our partners and our sponsors, is whether or not VISTAs can be involved in voter registration as part of their VISTA service, and the answer is, not surprisingly, no, they cannot be. So just please keep all of these in mind, and if anything comes up regarding any of these activities, please reach out to your state office.
Thanks, Barbara. So moving on to a few more prohibited activities. So supplanting staff. So members shall not perform duties that should be done or are typically done by paid staff or contractors. Also in reference to nepotism, we ask that you avoid the actual or appearance of favoritism in the operation of a VISTA placement. A VISTA member cannot be placed or assigned to a VISTA project site if the VISTA member is in the immediate family or a close relative of a project site staff member or vice versa. And of course, one of the key components of VISTA service is indirect service. So this means they should not be performing direct service. The role of VISTA is building capacity to bring communities out of poverty, and members do not perform direct service activities, except if needed during training, or doing so is merely incidental to performing their VAD's indirect service duties. For example, a member might design a school curriculum, but should not be the one regularly teaching children with that curriculum. Rather, they could recruit volunteers for that purpose. If you'd like more information or a full description of prohibited activities, please visit Chapter 15 of the Member Handbook. All right, next, let's dive into core responsibilities for project management. It's important to know that all sponsors must follow the requirements and policies set forth in the Memorandum of Agreement. Your organization has entered into a legal agreement with CNCS. All projects must have an anti-poverty focus, and all project activities from the application to the VISTA assignment description should tie back to alleviating poverty in your community. And if your project is already underway, you might be responsible for the project continuation. Be sure to submit a continuation application 90 days before expiration of the Memorandum of Agreement. All right, let's take another moment for a quick check-in with everyone. Please take a minute to type in the chat panel, what is your project start date? Give it just a couple seconds for this. All right, thanks for that. I see a variety of start dates listed. And as with our question about the name of your program officer earlier, depending on when you started with the VISTA project, you may not know your exact project start date, and that's perfectly okay.
So here are a few more project management responsibilities. If you operate at more than one location or service site, we definitely want you to have a memorandum of understanding with each of those sub-sites, and we certainly want to encourage partnership development as well. Depending on your agreement with CNCS, you might also be responsible for activities related to cost share. If you have any questions about any of that, please reach out to your state office. And finally, it's good to know that no matter what kind of grant you have or agreement you have with CNCS, we're all responsible for reporting about VISTA activities and outcomes in some way. So we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about reporting requirements.
So each VISTA project submits a set of reports to help CNCS review project progress. The information you provide in these reports demonstrate your project's impact, demonstrate resource management, and allows us to provide you better technical assistance. Next, Barbara and I will talk through a variety of required reports. As we start, it's good to know that your state office will provide all deadlines for your reports. You'll be able to find instructions in the sponsor resource guide. All right, let's walk through the main reports required from VISTA sponsors. All projects are required to submit sponsor verification forms, VISTA Progress Report Supplement, VISTA Project Progress Reports, and Future Plans forms. Only projects that have a program or support grant have to submit a Federal Financial Report or FFR. If you have questions about the type of grant you have with CNCS, access the agreement in eGrants or talk to your CNCS state office. All right, so every 2 weeks you'll submit a sponsor verification form. This helps CNCS track which members are still actively serving at your project so we can prevent member overpayment. This information also ties in directly to VISTA member payroll for standard VISTA projects. Please be sure to set reminders for this report. And if you're going to be out of the office, determine who's going to submit this report on your behalf. This function must be completed by a staff member. Please do not delegate it to another AmeriCorps member or a VISTA leader, an intern, or any other volunteers in your office. The project progress reports, or PPRs as we call them, for the first year of your project, these are generally completed on a quarterly basis. The report should build on each other. Check with your CNCS state office and in eGrants for more details on due dates depending on your project year, because after your second year, progress reports are typically semi-annual. That transition is at the discretion of the CNCS state office. The progress report information will be part of your project's official record and will be used to evaluate a project's continuation. If you have questions on what you should include, I'll refer you to the PPR instructions and the VISTA sponsor resource guide. If you are a project with multiple sites, you'll need to establish a way to aggregate information about members serving at those sites. Remember, don't wait until your progress report is due to ask a question or to share a member's impact. We highly encourage you to share information with your CNCS state office as it happens. That way, our state offices can help share your successes and coach you through your challenges as they come.
Next up, we have the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or VPRS. It's an annual report and tracks demographic information for your project, of course. Got to catch the demographics. The report is typically due late in the calendar year. It corresponds to our federal fiscal year. And it being, since we do capture it annually, it's probably going to be useful for you to track information on a monthly basis or on a more frequent basis to accurately be able to submit this report. You'll be able to find instructions on how to do this within your sponsor resource guide as well. And then finally, as you move through the year, you must also complete a future plans form for every AmeriCorps VISTA member at the end of their term of service. There are a couple different sections of that form, and the member will complete the first part, or Part A. Then your organization will complete Part B, which asks you to evaluate the member's performance. And this is a critical task for our sponsors at the end of the member's year. If you can certainly coordinate with the member supervisor if you are not directly supervising them. We just ask that you try to get into the habit and plan for doing that future form as early in the year as you can. So next up, I just want to talk a little bit about financial reporting. I think David mentioned these as well briefly. So for organizations that receive program and support grants, there's an additional report for the money, right, for the expenditure of federal funds. And that's called the FFR, of the Federal Financial Report. So please make sure to connect with your state office, pull in your fiscal, your financial management staff, your organization, just to make sure that you know what's due for your FFR and what the deadlines are. And then finally, if you have a cost share agreement as well, there will be invoices payable upon receipt. So you'll receive them on a monthly basis through eGrants. Again, be sure to confirm all of this with your state office, and hopefully it'll be a fairly straightforward calendar for you as you get ready for your reporting.
All right, thanks, Barbara. I'd like to share a few key tips about these reports and forms. We recommend you complete these forms early in the process. It can help you manage member recruitment and ties in directly to member and alumni benefits, specifically accessing the Education Award. For example, if a member wants to re-enroll or extend their service, then you should document how they've successfully supported your project and accomplished activities on their VAD and rate them accordingly. This will help the CNCS state office evaluate your and their request and compare it to our budget. If a member needs to leave their service early or terminate their service, the CNCS state office can unlock the future plans form. However, the request to release this form should not be the CNCS state office's first notification that the member will be terminating their service. Please bring the CNCS state office into the conversation early so that we can help you troubleshoot any potential issues. So I know this was a lot of information to absorb. Again, if you have questions, reach out to the CNCS state office. We're here to help you. So you've heard us talk about working with your CNCS state office quite a bit already. Another core responsibility is to share the good, the bad, and the ugly with your CNCS state office. By communicating openly, you position them to best support you. There are some things that the CNCS state office needs to hear about promptly, rather than when your next progress report is submitted. Please be sure to alert your CNCS state office of major accomplishments and events, such as new grant awards, visits from elected officials, and press coverage. Make sure and alert them as they happen rather than waiting for the next progress report. Your CNCS state office will want to hear about and spread the word about your successes. Also, notify them promptly of major emergencies, such as a member being AWOL or an early termination, as well as any acute or chronic challenges you're facing with members. It's important to just connect with your CNCS state office early and often. We're here to support you and your needs. And in order to do that effectively, we need to have open communication. Communicate with them about proposed changes to your project goals and member activities. Any changes to the VISTA assignment description, as well as shifts in staff, supervision, or anything that's going on in your organization that might affect the VISTA program.
Along with your state office, obviously, of course, you're going to want to share information about your VISTA projects with your own community and all of your networks. We ask, if you could, to please be sure to acknowledge the resources you receive from VISTA by identifying your members as AmeriCorps Vistas or AmeriCorps Vista members. If you can use that title, I think that's a really helpful marketing collaboration. We also ask if you have any promotional materials, either online or things that you get printed, if you could identify AmeriCorps Vista and CNCS as a funder or a supporter of your organization. In this way, if we are able to share information and keep communities and networks in the loop about your VISTA members, hopefully that'll help promote your projects, your services, as well as promote opportunities to serve with your organization. So we're going to shift a little bit now and just talk about regulatory compliance. Dun, dun, dun. As a VISTA sponsor, as you know, it's your responsibility to comply with all the regulations and requirements of our program. Lots of things there. And your state office will conduct monitoring and compliance activities throughout the life of your project to be a resource as well as to monitor and make sure that you are on track. As you know, since we're a federal program, and like anything supported with our public resources, we need to make sure that the way we're investing AmeriCorps Vista resources, that the programs are well run, and that we're doing what we're supposed to do and spending these funds wisely.
CNCS state offices ensure compliance by conducting site visits and compliance monitoring visits. Site visits are generally conducted by CNCS state offices, and sometimes occasionally headquarters personnel will attend too. They may be informational in nature or in order to provide technical assistance, or they might be for general project monitoring. So compliance monitoring visits are always scheduled in advance and are highly structured. They will probably include interviews with the project staff, VISTA members, advisory council members, and community members or beneficiaries. They will include a review of documentation and procedures, and they always include a letter outlining the conclusion, which is shared after the process. CNCS conducts these visits to make sure grantees are following the rules for AmeriCorps member and grant management, and to provide support to VISTA sponsoring organizations. You'll see that VISTA members also have a role when it comes to regulatory compliance. It is important to know that CNCS instructs VISTA members who feel they're being asked to do things that are not appropriate for their service to first talk about it with their supervisor. From there, they can talk with the CNCS state office. If the issue isn't resolved, or if they want to remain anonymous, and they believe the matter relates to fraud, waste, or abuse, they can contact the CNCS Office of Inspector General. If a VISTA member believes they've been subject to illegal discrimination related to their VISTA service, they should immediately contact the CNCS Equal Opportunity Program, which will also be covered a little bit later. So remember to report concerns to your CNCS state office. The CNCS state office is there to help develop, manage, and monitor VISTA projects, support you in managing your project and your VISTA members, assist with member emergencies, challenging situations, and questions of policy, and support you by connecting you to resources. So we talked about prohibited activities a bit earlier in our presentation. Now let's review a few important points. VISTA members should focus on what's outlined in the VISTA assignment description. which should tie directly to the overall project plan that was approved by CNCS. Your VISTA service should be to build capacity, not to undertake activities that can be construed as direct service. If VISTA members are being asked to take over the work of staff, say someone who left the organization, that's replacing or supplanting staff, and it's not allowed. Or if a VISTA member is mostly doing administrative support for someone else, that's also not appropriate work for a VISTA member.
So far today, we've galloped through a bunch of different items for you, and hopefully some of this is as relevant and super timely for your work and your VISTA sponsor responsibilities. Next, we just want to share some recommendations or keys to success, things that we've gleaned, as I said, from our own staff over the years, as well as from many of our partners around the country. So here are a few great tips, great recommendations for strong VISTA member management. Again, ongoing communication with your CSO, that is a big point for today's presentation. In addition, I want to talk a little bit about recruitment. I mentioned before, want to make sure that you're being very proactive in your recruitment, starting early. Definitely look for candidates that are a good fit for your project. Try to learn as much as you can about VISTA benefits, and then really spend as much time as you can investing in that VAD, or that VISTA assignment description. Once you've recruited your great VISTAs, it's a great practice to provide a strong OSOT, as we mentioned earlier. And then we encourage and we hope that you'll invest in and really focus on ongoing professional development and support in VISTAs throughout the year. In terms of ongoing supervision, basically, of course, we hope that you address any issues that arise, any challenges with your VISTAs early. You track their time, you avoid the restrictions on what they can do, the prohibited activities, and you work closely with your state office. We know ourselves, and we hear this often from our VISTAs, that it's incredibly helpful for supervisors particularly, to schedule regular check-ins, regular meetings with their VISTAs right at the beginning, and then to maintain that throughout the year, maintain that ongoing meeting schedule, ongoing communication. And then we also hope, obviously, that you'll find opportunities to appreciate and recognize the VISTA members at your site. And then as the year comes to a close, something that we share with you, of course, is the investment in helping members close out their service, help them prepare for and really transition to their life after VISTA. And that can include formal training, informal coaching, reviewing resumes. You might review other applications for school or job, but basically just being available and proactive in helping VISTAs transition. So we'll look at a few recommendations for project management success. Again, communication with the CSO right at the top of that list will always be at the top of your list. We want to, of course, remind you about the rules regarding VISTA management. We want to remind you that there's an approved project application. So if you are new, if you're a new sponsor or a new supervisor for VISTA and you don't yet have your hands on that project application, please get it. And then please make sure that you are investing in and consulting with and really engaging your community. We look to our VISTAs to do that with you very, very closely as you develop your projects over time. So like all federal agencies, CNCS has an Office of Inspector General, or OIG. You can see the contact information for our OIG on the slide in front of you. This office is responsible for preventing and detecting waste, fraud, and abuse. I believe that is their official mission statement. We encourage, if you encounter any challenges with your project or your members, we'd like you to first try to address them at your level, at the sponsor level, and engage your state office as appropriate, as necessary. If they're not resolved, if issues aren't resolved, or they really rise to a level that requires external intervention, and/or you would like to remain anonymous, please contact the OIG. The OIG takes all of the allegations and communications they receive very seriously, and they want to be thorough in their investigations. They're also here with us to make sure that we're all staying true to our rules and our regulations in terms of the VISTA program. As W just mentioned, it's good to know VISTA members are protected by VISTA and CNCS from discrimination or harassment. Our Equal Opportunity Officer, EOO, is responsible for and charged with reviewing and processing discrimination complaints for all CNCS service members, including VISTAs. So With that, I want to turn you back to David and talk a little bit about next steps after today.
All right, so we hope today's presentation has given you a good sense of the role of the VISTA sponsor and a sense of where to go to learn more. Let's review next steps as we start to wrap up today. Following this webinar, please notify your CNCS state office that you completed this session. Your CNCS state office will be able to answer your project-specific questions and can review next steps as you continue to learn about VISTA, your project, and your roles and responsibilities. If you are a sub-site supervisor, you will receive a project-specific training from your project director. As you prepare to manage a VISTA project, take time to review the resources that have been shared with you and become familiar with the VISTA campus. And finally, be sure to pursue other training as you're directed by your CNCS state office and VISTA.
Great, thank you. So you can see on the screen again a reminder about the recording for today. That'll be on the VISTA campus probably in a week or so. It takes us a few days to render that. We would love if you have just a couple of minutes, if you can share some feedback on today's presentation. David and I will use it and try to turn it around really, really quickly for future orientations for sponsors. We know we have covered so much ground today. We're actually running a little bit late, so thank you for hanging in there as we've been talking through all of these really important topics. I do want to just pause for a second and check in with my colleague, Eric Powell, and see if there's a question or two that's come up in the chat that would be particularly useful for folks to hear. So Eric, anything particularly good that you think would be useful for the whole group?
Sure, thank you, Barbara. There was one question that I'll pose to you and David, and it came from Teresa, and the question was, in terms of recruitment, after a sponsor lists a recruitment listing in the my.americorps.gov system, would the sponsoring organization put any additional posting advertisements on any other venues or websites?
Yeah, I mean, I can start out, and David, definitely there's additional information to share. Please, we really, really encourage you within your resources and within your particular structure to promote your VISTA opportunities in every possible way. So if that means for you that you have access to online postings or printed opportunities to promote your VISTA opportunities, we really would love you to be able to take advantage of that if you can. David, anything else that you would say to that question around recruitment?
Yeah, I would just echo that. Definitely being creative helps, you know, especially as
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for that, and thank you for that question. I've glanced a little bit at the chat panel as we've gone through today and have seen a number of comments and questions. I hope you guys have seen those as well. As I said, we'll take your questions, we'll take your feedback, and really try to apply it to this presentation to improve it for future orientation. I do want to take a quick poll now and see if anyone who is on, if you are playing along with the bingo, if you had a chance to find any of these. So if you did this, just take a quick second. How many of these acronyms did you identify today? Anyone at all? Anyone did the bingo while we were online today? I see a couple folks typing in. I am hopeful, 100%. Jenna, thank you. That's awesome. I'm hopeful CNCS, CSO, VISTA, BAD, at least 50% of these have to be really, really ingrained in your brain at this point. And if they're not, as I said, in the handouts panel, that resource guide, you'll be able to find, along with the PowerPoint for today, you can certainly find all of the definitions for these acronyms. So thank you for doing that. I see some folks got over 50%. So we obviously have covered so much information today. I really want to thank David Chaney for being our state office spokesperson and speaking so eloquently about the important role of our field colleagues. Thanks to Eric as well for managing our chat and our colleagues at LSI. And really thank you all for being on today, for taking this time out to focus on VISTA project management, on VISTA member support, and frankly for being part of VISTA.